Hi there! Welcome to this video. My name is Davey Cretin. This is Cretin Classics, and today I'm going to be ranking the albums of a trio, sort of a cult band. You might want to call them a cult band. Zebra. Zebra came from New Orleans, Louisiana, or New Orleans, as most people say. And in the early 70s, the band was formed, and the basis of the band, the three members of the band, Randy Jackson on guitar, lead vocals, some keyboards, Felix Hanneman on bass, backing vocals, occasional lead vocals, and keyboards, and Guy Gelso, drummer, and does backing vocals as well. In the early 70s, Jackson and Hanneman got together. They were in a band together called Shepherd's Bush. And at the dawn of the 70s, a long time ago, they left Shepherd's Bush towards the end of 1974, and they formed a band called Maelstrom with Guy Gelso on drums and a keyboard player. In early 1975, the keyboard player left, and they've been a trio ever since. So they're coming up on their 50-year anniversary, but more on that later. So at the time, they were a cover band, and they would occasionally throw some of their original songs into the set, mainly written by Randy Jackson. And in 75, they also changed their name to Zebra, from Maelstrom to Zebra, after seeing, actually, this is such an odd story, they saw a 1926 issue of Vogue, and on the cover, there was a model riding an actual zebra. Somehow they changed the name to Zebra. So if you thought the 70s were weird, the 1920s sound even weirder, which is now 100 years ago. Scary thought. The trio played gigs down south, Louisiana, the surrounding states, and then they also started playing gigs on Long Island, New York. And this is where they attained a big following. Were playing a lot of concerts. Their crowds were getting bigger and bigger. They were doing some college campuses on Long Island. And word filtered out to the record companies in Manhattan about this band playing Long Island, doing a lot of Led Zeppelin covers and 70s rock covers and some original songs. So the record labels eventually began filtering from Manhattan to Long Island to see the shows. And Zebra was signed to Atlantic Records in 1983. So 8 years after deciding on the name Zebra and becoming this power trio, three core musicians, three great players and singers, they finally attained a record deal. And in 1983, they put out their debut album. So they finally had some merchandise in the record stores after all that time. Now they've released a bunch of albums since then. And also in, I guess it was 2010, they, on their 35th anniversary, they were inducted into the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. 2 years later, in 2012, they were inducted into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. So these guys do have some good credentials. About 7 years ago, Randy Jackson told the newspaper in Shreveport, Louisiana, that he'd written new songs and he hoped to record them soon. This was 7 years ago. Since then, crickets. Nothing from the Zebra camp. They do tour. Randy also plays solo shows. More on that later. And nothing has been heard from Zebra. Their last album came out in 2003. Now that's over 20 years ago. And then all of a sudden, 10 days ago, approximately 10 days ago, before I recorded this video, I had all my notes down and I had to make changes because a big article came out that Zebra had a lot of great news for their fans worldwide, around the world. They have announced a 2024 tour, so you can go to their website and find out all the tour dates. Also, besides a tour, they're finally releasing a new album later this year. Of course, after I decide and rank the albums, boom, a new record due out later this year. Also, besides the new album, they're working on a documentary called Tell Me What You Want, 50 Years of Zebra. because it's nearly 50 years since they formed. So we have that to look forward to. And around my birthday, late November, they're having Zebra Weekend in Louisiana. And they're going to film some of that I'm guessing they're going to be using for the documentary, which I imagine would come out in 2025 on their 50-year anniversary. So we have the tour to look forward to, a documentary next year, a new album hopefully later this year, and lastly, they are re-releasing their debut album on colored vinyl. Will it be black and white vinyl? Interesting. We'll have to see. And besides re-releasing the vinyl, the debut album on colored vinyl, they're also releasing a bonus disc, so I guess it's going to be a CD release and also a vinyl release, of outtakes and rarities. So another thing for Zebra fans to look forward to. But now, after that brief history, or maybe too long of a history, let's get ready to rank the albums of Zebra. Zebra have released 4 studio records over 40 years, let's say. Later this year, maybe a 5th album, maybe next year, we'll see. So I'm going to rank the 4 albums in the order that I like them in. Coming in at number 4, and I have a CD to show you for this. This is Zebra's 4th album, simply entitled Zebra 4. Zebra on the front. There we see the 4 on the back. Since this was actually released in the CD age, this is the longest Zebra album, clocking in at about 52 minutes and 11 songs. They never had an album with that many songs. So 11 songs, about 52, 53 minutes. There's the disc. So, Zebra's 4th album came out in July of 2003, so now it's over 20 years that this came out. It didn't chart. It didn't certify, unfortunately. Their record contract with Atlantic Records had long expired, so they released this album on a small label called Mayhem Records. I was working at a record store at the time, and my friend Joe and I were kind of disappointed when the record came out. And at the time, I had never seen Zebra before, but I did see them live when they were touring for this album. Saw them in a local place on Long Island. The name escapes me now. I think they're long out of business. But at any rate, I think they only did 1 song from this new album. The first track, the emphasis track that was getting played on WBAB in Long Island at the time, called Arabian Nights. And that kicks off the album in fine style. It's got that Middle Eastern kind of vibe, a Zeppelin-y type of sound, and Zebra were always known for having a Zeppelin-esque sound. They used to do tons of Zeppelin covers. They still do live, actually. And I'm sure that night I saw them, I think they closed with a cover of The Ocean, if I remember correctly, from Zeppelin. But at any rate, at the time, Joe and I were kind of disappointed with this record. It just didn't hit like the first brace of Atlantic Records albums. But I've been playing the CD recently going to and from work, borough to borough here in New York, and I've decided that, at least my opinion of this album, I was wrong, and it's a much better album than I give it credit for. Still comes in at number 4. It's not a bad album. Zebra have never made a bad album in my eyes, but it just, over the years and playing it a lot recently, it's opened up its textures to me. So I like it more now than I did back then. It's a darn good album. I said Arabian Nights is a really good opening track. Very hard rocking song. Pardon me for a moment. Need to wet my whistle. So Arabian Nights is a really good song to start the album. Other hard-hitting, hard rock, they're not really heavy metal band. I don't consider Zebra a metal band. I would say hard rock band. Some other hard-hitting numbers from the album. Light of My Love. KK is Hiding. My Life Has Changed. And they have a lot of excellent melodic, mid-tempo, less heavy numbers on the album. Who Am I? Really good. So I Dance. Such a catchy chorus. Excellent song. That one really caught my ear. And I like to sing along with that one when I'm in my car driving. Another good one, A World That Is Learning. And I think it's the last song, Why. Now, there's a song on this album called Waiting to Die. And it's the longest studio track that Zebra have ever recorded. It clocks in at almost 8 minutes, and it's very different from their normal sound. It's kind of bluesy, jazzy, laid back, and there's even a saxophone in it. Their good old friend whom I saw play live with them, Chili Willie, plays saxophone. So I'm in my car driving to work, and I said, oh, saxophone. I'm not really a big horn fan in rock and roll, maybe Chicago, some Billy Joel. That's the extent of it. Floyd, I would say, the way they use saxophone. And I heard the saxophone, and I thought, oh, no. But the more I heard this song, the more I liked it, and I looked forward to it because it lends a different sound to the record. So it's a break from the hard rock and the mid-tempo. It's a laid-back groove, and it's kind of an interesting song. So I also recommend Waiting to Die for a different taste, a different style and sound in Zebra's overall sound. Let's see. That's about it on this album. I would rate this album out of 10. I would give this album an 8 out of 10. So that's coming in at number 4, the 4th Zebra studio album, Zebra 4. Number 4 on the back there. Number 3. Oh, I neglected to say that the 4th album was produced and engineered by the band's own Randy Jackson. Coming in at number 3, this might be a contrarian take, but we all hear things differently. We all have our own opinions and how we rank these albums. Produced by Jack Douglas, who's known for working with Cheap Trick, Aerosmith, John Lennon, and a lot more. From 1984, their second album, No Tellin' Lies. This came out September of 1984. It didn't certify. It reached number 84 on the charts, the Billboard Top 200 album charts. It's Zebra's second album. It came out a year and a half after their debut album. And I think Atlantic Records at the time thought it was a bit of a failure because it didn't certify. Their first album did. More on that later. And it only reached 84. It didn't chart as high, and it just didn't have the punch, and it didn't do as well as the first album. So I think the record label saw it as a failure. They did release some videos. They tried to promote it, just didn't do as well as the debut album. So it's the 3 guys, the trio on the album. They also have a few guests on the album. A guy named George Small plays piano, and Stan Bronstein plays saxophone and synthesizers. At the time, I thought it was a bit of a drop-off from the first album, but I still like it. There's some great tracks on here. It's a little less progressive and maybe less heavy sounding, less hard rock, and it's more rock and roll sounding. They sort of flash back to the 50s and 60s sound, little rock and roll-y in spots, and less progressive, less hard rock. So I think I've always held that against the album personally, just the way I hear it. But there are some great songs on here. The heavy metal thunder of the opening track, Wait Until the Summer's Gone. What a kick-ass song. I've always loved that song. There's a video for it. At the time, I didn't have MTV. More on that later, too. But I did see the video somewhere. Maybe it was Friday night videos on NBC. Maybe it was, what's that song? Night Tracks or something. Night Flight on TBS, I think it was. But it's a great song. Great way to kick off the album. Then there's the melodic masterpiece, Bears. That's a great song. Very melodic, great synthesizer work, keyboard work from Felix Hanneman on that one. Some nice acoustic guitar work from Randy Jackson. Great song, Bears. There was a video for that as well. Then the beautiful ballad, which I just found out recently is a tribute to John Lennon. Who knew? I didn't know that. I'm listening to the lyrics, and I said, is this song about John Lennon? Because it came out a few years after he had passed. And Lullaby is a tribute to John Lennon. So I also like that song. I think that's a really good song. The monster stomp of the title track, No Tellin' Lies. Another really good hard rock song. And then the longest song on the album, over 5 minutes, which is probably, I would say, my favorite song on the album, But No More. That's a great song. That has a good hard rock feel. It has a lot of progressive elements to it, and it's just great melodies in that song. I really like But No More. I would say that's my favorite song from the album. Overall, I would rate this album, the second album, No Tellin' Lies, 8.5 out of 10. Coming in at number 2, their third album, 3.5. This was released in May of 1986. This was produced by Randy Jackson and Zebra. So, production credit for all three guys. This unfortunately did not chart. It did not certify. Came out a couple of years after the second album, and Atlantic just didn't push this one at all. This one also has more of an AOR, and I would say it's less heavy metal, it's more melodic, more AOR, and there's hard rock too. It's a very good record. I think it's more consistent than the second album. Has more of a thorough feel throughout the record. So I really enjoy this record. I think I like it a lot more than most Zebra fans do. So that's why it comes in at number 2, 3.5. Now, on this record, first of all, I'm surprised that Atlantic didn't drop them right after this album, because it didn't chart, it didn't perform well at all. I figured they would have lost their record deal, but they didn't, because about 4 years later in 1990, they released a really good live album that we used to play. Joe and I would play that all the time. We worked at a place on Long Island called Titus Oaks Record Exchange. Some of you from New York might remember that place. They had a location in Hicksville and Huntington. And in the Hicksville location at the time, Joe and I played that CD all the time. Really good live album. They do a couple of unreleased songs on there, so that's of note, going to the live album. I'm digressing for a moment, sorry. And they also do a cover of Led Zeppelin's The Ocean on that record too. But getting back to 3.5, some of my favorite songs from this album, the frenetic Better Not Call, and that's definitely a song in the hard rock vein, with some really nice guitar work from Randy Jackson on that song. The dreamy melodicism of Your Mind's Open. Nice keyboard work by Felix Hanneman on that one. Very good song. Some melodic yet hard-rocking songs, Can't Live Without, which I think was the first single from the album, and Hard Living Without You. And then my two favorites from the album, they're 5 minutes each. It's a 40-minute album. These two songs are 5 minutes each, so adding up to 10 minutes, to me, it's the best 10 minutes on the album. Time and About to Make the Time. Those are my two favorite songs from this album. Excellent guitar work, excellent playing from the whole band on those two songs. And I would say they skew a bit more towards the progressive realm, so maybe that's why I enjoy them more personally. And years ago, my friend has a band called Myriad. They're also a progressive rock power trio. And they were playing with Randy Jackson when he was doing one of his acoustic gigs. And they were playing in a bar on the island somewhere. I don't even remember the name of the place, whether it was Nassau County, Suffolk County. And Randy was taking requests. So I yelled out, About to Make the Time. And he played it on acoustic guitar. And there's this guitar riff, electric guitar riff, and he did it on the acoustic. And the way his hands moved on the acoustic to play that was some stretch, and it was very cool. So the fact that he did a song that I requested, I was over the moon. And that was the highlight of that Randy Jackson acoustic show. So getting back to the album, 3.5. I really like this album. Probably a lot more than most Zebra fans, and don't get upset. I would rank this album a 9 out of 10. Getting to my number one album, of course, the debut album from 1983. Once again produced by the infamous Jack Douglas. This came out March of 1983, simply called Zebra. Debut album, self-titled. Picture of the three guys on the album cover, black and white album cover. It reached number 29 on the US charts, and it actually certified gold. At the time, in 1983, a little over 40 years ago when this came out, it was the fastest selling debut record of all time on Atlantic Records. Unfortunately, it's since been eclipsed, but that's a nice record to hold by the boys. As I said, their debut album from 1983. At the time, I didn't have MTV here in Queens, New York. I wasn't wired for it till like 87, I think, after Live Aid sometime. I don't remember exactly. So I caught these videos. Actually, I didn't even see the videos at the time. I heard the songs on the radio through that station I mentioned before, WBAB from Long Island. They were definitely playing Who's Behind the Door. And they were playing the song title, just flew right out of my head, Tell Me What You Want, their biggest hit. At any rate, so I heard those songs on WBAB 102.3 from Long Island, and they may have even gotten airplay on, at the time, WNEW-FM, maybe WPLJ, when they were a good rock station back in the day. So I heard those songs, and I said, oh, these songs are really cool. And I went out and I bought the debut record on vinyl. Since then, it's been my favorite album. It's a near perfect album. So, bought it on vinyl, and 8 years after forming, they finally had merchandise in the store. They had product in the store. Not a big fan of the word product. But at any rate, this album kicks off with Tell Me What You Want, which is a very catchy hard rock song, and it's probably their best known song since then. It's some really great drum work by Guy Gelso. I like the way he rides the ride cymbal during Tell Me What You Want. Really like the drums on that song. Followed up by One More Chance. As I said before, has a great propulsive rhythm, not an easy word to say, by Guy Gelso on drums, Felix Hanneman on bass. They're a really good engine for this band, and Randy Jackson just floats over the top of them on guitars and on his vocals. Take Your Fingers From My Hair is the epic song here, over 7 minutes. And until that other song I mentioned earlier from the fourth album, this was their longest song. It was also covered later on, I think 2009. Dream Theater did a cover version of this song. And as much as I love Dream Theater, their version pales compared to the original Zebra version. The Zebra song is great. There's no beating it. Very progressive, epic, over 7 minute song, different sections. Basically the Stairway to Heaven. So Take Your Fingers From My Hair, great song. And all three guys shine on this song. Guy Gelso on drums, Hanneman on keyboards especially, and Jackson on guitar. Acoustic guitar, electric guitar, his vocals are great. And the way he sings up there, he must use some kind of special effect to make his voice even higher than a normal voice. He's even higher than Robert Plant. So it's got to be some kind of pedal board trick he does. I should have researched it. Sorry, I meant to and I didn't. Getting back to the album, I think I missed a song here. Yes, Who's Behind the Door. I didn't mention Who's Behind the Door, which is a great song. And years later, I did see the video. Another cool video. And it's about aliens coming to Earth. To side 2 of the record, Don't Walk Away, I think is the sleeper song on this record. People don't talk about Don't Walk Away, but it's very melodic, very fast-paced. I really like that song. And then the album ends in fine fettle with the La La song. And for years, Guy Gelso always does his drum solo during the La La song, and then they go back into it to finish it out. The one little sticking point I have on this album is the song, track 3 on side 1, I think it is, Slow Down. It's a cover of an old Carl Perkins song. And it doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit perfectly with the album. And it sort of reminds me of the stuff that I don't think is as high standard-wise on the second album. It reminds me of Slow Down from the first album. I'd rather not have this cover song there. I wish it was more an original song. But my guess is that the record label said, guys, you got to have a cover song. We have to release something someone will know. I'm guessing it's more record company meddling. So that's the one song, Slow Down, that keeps this from being a perfect album in my mind, the way I view it. So this album, I give a 9.5 out of 10. It's that good. And any fan of hard rock, heavy metal, very melodic rock, I recommend the debut Zebra album. Great album. Go out and listen to it. YouTube, Spotify, whatever, go and buy it on vinyl, CD. I think it's still in print on Atlantic Records. The others might be harder to find, but the first album you could always find. Speaking of that, Zebra also have a few live albums. And I did see them live. I've seen them live twice. I saw them at that place, I can't remember, on the island after the fourth album came out, where they did Arabian Nights, maybe one of the songs from the record. Thought they were great live. They were a really good, entertaining live band. They always put on a great show. And in 1990 on Atlantic Records, they came out with the album called Zebra Live, just simply a live album. A few years later, they released a live album from the King Biscuit Flower Hour that also has a lengthy interview at the end of it. I think there's like a 15 to 18-minute interview at the end of the live album. So they have two live albums, and they also have a couple of DVDs. They have a DVD with some documentary type footage and all their MTV videos from back in the 80s. And then they also have a live DVD that they released in, I think it was 2007, because we carried that at the record store that Joe and I worked at, a different record store we were working at later on together. Funny how we always find each other. And hopefully Joe will be appearing on the channel with me. But I digress again. So they have a couple of DVDs, a couple of live CDs, and I've seen Zebra twice live. The second time I saw them was at Westbury Music Fair. They put on a really good show, and I remember that show. Felix Hanneman, they did a cover of the old Montrose classic from 1973, Rock Candy, and Felix Hanneman sang that song live to give Jackson a break. They did a really good hard rockin' version of Rock Candy. So I've seen Zebra twice, and I think I saw Randy Jackson do two solo shows. The one time when my friend's band Myriad opened up for him. I think I saw him somewhere else. But back in the day, I saw so many shows, I can't even remember them all. My sister claims I saw the Eagles with her, and I have no recollection of seeing the Eagles. I'm not sure what that says about that show. She swears I was with her, yet I have no recollection of it. The band also have a very cool best of, if you can find that on CD. It's called In Black and White, The Best of Zebra. Besides having all the hits, it has a few workshop demos from the late 70s of some songs that would appear on their debut album. I think it's Tell Me What You Want and Take Your Fingers From My Hair. There are different versions of those. Also a couple of unreleased studio tracks on the best of. So I recommend the best of. It's over 70 minutes long. So if you find it on CD, it's really good bang for your buck. Highly recommended, the best of Zebra in black and white. At any rate, so I recommend everyone go out and listen to some Zebra. Let's see. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I'd like to see your ranking of the Zebra albums. This is Davey Cretin from Cretin Classics saying thank you, take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye-bye. Rock out and prog on.